Hello, welcome to a special edition in CUNY Citizenship Now's Facebook Live series. Today's Facebook Live is sponsored by the New York State Office for New Americans Liberty Defense Project, and funding for CUNY Citizenship Now's legal services is made possible thanks to the New York City Council. I am Shawn Rahman of CUNY Citizenship Now, and our topics today are temporary protected status and deferred enforced departure, or TPS and DED for short. I'm going to go ahead and put up a graphic with the ways that you can contact us right now. If you would like to make an appointment to speak to one of our immigration attorneys, please call us at 646-664-9400 or at 212-652-2071. You can also text us at 929-334-3784 or by email also at citizenshipnowinfo@cuny.edu. So today we are really excited to feature our resident expert on TPS and DED. He is one of CUNY Citizenship Now's senior immigration attorneys and the managing attorney at the New American Center at Kingsborough Community College. Erick Myssura. Erick, thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you for the warm introduction.
So Erick, before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that Erick is taking questions following today's talk. So please go ahead and drop your questions in the comment section, and we're going to try to get to as many as we can. All right, Erick. So let's get started. Right before President Trump left office, Erick, he announced DED for certain Venezuelans residing in the US. And then in early March, the Biden administration designated Venezuela for TPS. So let's start with this. What is TPS and DED?
So let's start with the latter. So TPS is when the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security designates a country where in that country, the conditions temporarily prevent nationals or residents of that country to return safely. Or alternatively, when that country is unable to handle the return of those nationals or residents. So to kind of make the distinction more clear, Syria has some unpleasantness currently. So it would be unsafe for those nationals and residents to return safely to Syria. Alternatively, we had an earthquake in Haiti a few years back. In that situation, the government of Haiti was using resources to deal with the tragedy that happened there, and it would further strain those resources to have a large number of individuals suddenly return to Haiti. So to ease that burden, temporary protected status is enacted for certain countries. It's a temporary status, so it's for a designated period of time, and it's to kind of relieve that pressure. So alternately, we have DED, which is a presidential function. So the president, in his executive powers, he basically designates certain nationals of a country and says they're not subject to removal from the United States. And that's also for a set period of time. So essentially it's a promise from the presidency not to deport or not to remove from the United States.
All right, now, but for Venezuelans, so how is DED different or better than TPS, or what is better, DED or TPS? Is DED just the same as TPS, but maybe not as good or worse? How does someone decide?
So in the current case, Venezuelans have the option of both DED and TPS. We're going to talk about some other countries that have TPS and some other countries that have DED, but specifically for them, because they have both, one might ask themselves, what should I apply for? What's best for me? How does that affect my life? So to kind of simplify it in general terms, and I'm going to start by saying it's best to talk to a legal professional, an attorney, services like ours, to kind of go through your particular circumstances so you can get the best grasp of what is the best situation for you. Ultimately, the decision's yours, but so you can kind of tackle with, the nuance of it. So TPS is a status, meaning that you have to actively apply for it. There's a short window with 6 months of when you can apply for that temporary protected status. And if you're out of status or in status, you could apply within this window. And if you're eligible, you'll be granted TPS. DED alternatively is more of a passive situation where should you face some sort of deportation or removal, DED would, you already have DED, and that would kick in saying, based on the presidential order, I'm not removable. So one's more active, one's more passive, both apply to you. You could have both simultaneously, and both can yield a work authorization should you want it.
Yeah, no, great point. That's a very good point. Again, you can get a work permit with either. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Now, now you mentioned other countries earlier. You mentioned Syria and Haiti, which was granted TPS after the earthquake, as you mentioned. For right now, though, what other countries are currently eligible for TPS?
So we're having this live broadcast on May 19th. So within this current period, the countries that have TPS available to them is Venezuela, like we mentioned. Syria is re-registering at the current time. So they had TPS and now they're in a period of re-registration. The secretary also redesignated Syria. So if you missed out on the first opportunity to apply for TPS as a Syrian national, there's a new opportunity. And it was announced, but USCIS has yet to update, you know, where and when to apply for it. But Myanmar, Burma has also been designated as a country for TPS. Other countries that have DED currently is Liberia.
All right. All right. You mentioned, you know, you mentioned these dates. We're going to go ahead and get up the country information on the screen in just a minute, but let's talk about eligibility for a second while we do this. So what makes somebody eligible or ineligible for TPS? I think we have
let's
Venezuela.
start with eligibility.
Yeah.
So it's fairly simple. You have to be a resident or national of the country. And again, I stress, please seek out an immigration service provider, you know, like especially with us in New York, there's lots of great service providers. There's really great ones that me and Shawn work for, CUNY Citizenship now.
Well, let's not sugarcoat it. Don't go see a notario, right? There is no one more qualified to give you this advice than an attorney, and the services are free in a city like New York with a number of great organizations, including CUNY Citizenship Now. You know, you should not be getting your immigration advice from somebody who does your taxes or anybody else who professes to do these things. You have great lawyers like Erick in organizations that are ready and willing to help you free of charge.
Well, and also in New York, there's so many organizations that are free or low cost,
right?
That, you know, even for your own edification, if you wanted to tackle it by yourself, it's worth it just to pick their brain on the subject matter. Because the other thing that I know that CUNY does, you know, is that we check to make sure that you're not eligible for any other benefit. So you may say, I want TPS, but you know, the attorney you talk to might say, hey, but have you thought about these options or those options? So that way you get a more well-rounded perspective on what benefits you might be eligible for.
All right, great.
But to go back to eligibility.
Yes, go ahead.
So it's fairly simple. You know, there are certain people who have cases that are more nuanced, but generally speaking, a resident or national of a designated country. So you have to prove that. So if you're a Venezuelan citizen or you have some sort of permanent residence in Venezuela and you're in the United States, that's the first prong, to prove that you're a resident national of the designated country. And you have to show that you have been in the United States as of the designation date. So this is more of a catch to say, hey, you were here when the designation happened. So you were here as of that incident. So that's why it's difficult for you to return. So, you know, it's kind of to have that window, you know, group in those affected by it.
So Eric, let's go over the specific dates because we're showing them on the screen right now. Venezuela, take us through these this information.
So Venezuela, for eligibility, you'd have to live continuously in the United States since March 8th, 2021. You had to be physically present in the United States as of March 9th. And the registration ends, so this is the window where it closes where you could apply. That'll end in September 5th, 2021. And the designation, you'll have that temporary protected status through September 9th, 2022. So some people might be confused about the lived in and physically present. So, based on the designation and the circumstances that require the temporary protected status, the distinction without much of a difference is you've had to have lived in the United States by a certain point, and you had to be present on that day when that designation happened. So if you have a situation where someone has lived here, but the situation happened and they're like, I'm moving to Canada, and they move to Canada, they then can't come back and say, I want TPS, because they've already made affirmative efforts to kind of secure their a situation that's safe for them.
All right.
So that's why there's that kind of, it may seem like a little goofy to people who aren't in the know, but that's the reason for it.
All right. Let's go to the next slide. What country's up next?
It should be Syria.
All right. So take us through the dates on Syria.
So Syria, because Syrians had TPS previously, right? So I don't recall the original designation date, but I'd assume it's 18 months in the past, just judging how these things go. So now that their TPS is ending, the secretary says, hey, the situation has not improved. It is not safe for you to return. So they're extending it. And also for those Syrians who weren't here on the initial designation date, you can now apply because of the same circumstances that required the first designation. So for Syrians who are initially applying, you have to continuously reside as of March 19th, right? Physically present since March 31st. And you have until September 15th, 2021 to apply. And that designation runs to the 30th of September, 2022. So to re-register, you have until May 18th, I believe. No,
that's what it says.
No, your registration ends May 18th. May 18th.
Right. All right, and
so you have the same window to apply to re-register. Right. Sorry,
that's all right. And we have one more country. Go ahead on Burma.
All right, and so Burma, they've announced that they've designated Burma, Myanmar, depending on your predilection, to designated for TPS. So they haven't announced the specific designation dates. We're gonna estimate them to be likely around March 11th for both the physical presence and live continuously, because that's when they announced Burma as designated. And that status should run until September 12th, 2022. So a lot of people are concerned because they announced it and they haven't heard anything. Just USCIS works at its own pace. DED was announced in January. They re-updated their website in March. And TPS for Venezuela was announced in March. And in the next day, the website was updated telling you how you apply. So there's I'm sure there's rhyme or reason to it, but it can be unpredictable. So, but we do know that the secretary did designate it. So it's something that we could confidently say this is how you would prepare for it. So when that mailing address to mail your application goes live, you'll be ready to send your application that first day.
All right, great. So Eric, now we've shown these dates. You've talked about eligibility. Let's talk a little bit about ineligibility. What USCIS may be looking for that that might make you ineligible.
So I want, again, the running theme here to stress. Seek out legal assistance because you may think that, oh, I have this and therefore I'm not eligible. Talk to a professional so that they could kind of assess your situation and give you an honest answer of whether or not it's going to be a problem or not. So basically, the things you should bring up to the attorney that's helping you with this application is if you have citizenship or permanent residence or some sort of possibility of residing in another country other than the United States and the designated country. Because that might be a factor whether or not they're going to approve your TPS. And the other thing that's common in most immigration benefits is interactions with law enforcement. So even if it was a long time ago, even if you finished the sentence, oh, you were a kid when that happened, bring it up, discuss it, because you rather proactively explain the situation, so you're explaining it on your terms, rather than them sending you a notice saying, please explain this, and then you have 87 days to find the documentation, send it to them with an explanation as to what happened, and hopefully that. So things to look out for, typically it's on the, they're looking for felonies or more than one misdemeanor, but definitely bring it up, even minor stuff, because depending on the jurisdiction, case in point in New York, sometimes something could be a violation and something might be, a major misdemeanor, like, jumping the turnstile in a subway, depending how the officer writes it up on the ticket, could be, very difficult to overcome, or it could be a nothing.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. We want to go ahead and give out our numbers again. Let's get that slide up. It is, if you would like to make an appointment with us to speak to one of our immigration attorneys, please call us at 646-664-9400 or at 212-652-2071. Again, you can reach us also by text at 929-334-3784 or by email at citizenshipnowinfo@cuny.edu. All right, Eric, now because you and I work for CUNY and and assist a lot of students, what's your advice to students here on either those are here either on student visas or maybe exchange visas who may also qualify for TPS? What do we tell them?
So for students here on student visas, they're eligible for TPS and DED too. So like I mentioned initially, the limited factors of the crime and the nationality being the factors to apply for TPS. If you're on an F1 student visa, for example, that's probably the more common one that we deal with. You might say, I'm an F1, I'm from Venezuela, can I apply for TPS? And the answer is yes, because TPS is a non-immigrant status, as is F1, so they don't contradict each other. So you could have both at the same time, but you have to remind yourself that you have to stay in each status individually. So if you're a student, you know the responsibilities. I'm sure your DSO or student advisor has drilled this into your head more often than once, that you have to be a full-time student, pass all your classes, work in a limited capacity like on-campus work or OPT or CPT. You can't work off campus, just for, because you want a little extra cash in your pocket. You have to maintain within that F1 parameters. So, but you could also apply for TPS, and TPS, you could also get a work authorization, but those parameters aren't there. So you could have both, but you have to be compliant with both. So, I guess if you stop being a Venezuelan national, the TPS would go away, presumably, but that's just argumentative. But so if you're an F1 student and let's say you go from a full-time student just to taking one class, that F1 status would potentially go away, but you'd still have the TPS, underlying it. So if you want to maintain both, you have to be diligent and maintain both.
All right. Now, as far as, maintain both, because like you said, if you fall out of F1 status while on TPS, what happens then? Well,
you still have TPS. So
right. That's right.
You're consistently in TPS. Let's say you actively choose, hey, F1 status isn't for me right now. I'm going to go with TPS. It gives me the permission to work. I'm going to work, save enough money, maybe go back to school one day. Well,
Right.
because TPS is a status, you can move from status into another status. So potentially, given your immigration situation, again, speak to an immigration professional when you're planning out what you want to do. You could go back into the F1 status with a change of status. So, or you could also, go into other statuses. Like if your employer wants to sponsor you for a green card, you go from TPS to that. But, the details of that is more on an individual basis. It's not blanket. Speak to an immigration professional. Make sure that, you are eligible for such things.
All right. Eric, we've come up on about 20, 21 minutes. Let's take a few questions. We have a few questions in the comments, and we got a couple also by text. So here's the first question, Eric. If the TPS application is denied, could USCIS start a removal proceeding? Could they deport you?
So it all depends on your individual situation. Now, let's go to a lighter example, right? Say you're Venezuelan, your TPS was denied for X, Y, or Z reason. You would still have DED because we talked about it, but we talked about it later. So you might still be eligible to be protected under DED. DED also has certain restrictions. Again, speak to an immigration professional because the devil will be in the details on that. So and let's say we have that F1 Venezuelan student. So their TPS was denied. Let's say they also had citizenship in another country like Colombia, and their TPS was denied, but they maintained their F1 status. You stay in your F1 status, But so it all depends on your given situation.
All right. Now let's look at the not so bright side. Let's say it's not Venezuela, and you don't have any other status, and your TPS application is denied. Could you then be subject to removal?
Presumably, if you're removable, then they could start removal proceedings against you. But so that's why we stress the importance of seeking out immigration professional to make sure that, one, you won't get denied, and two, understand the consequences if you do.
All right. Eric, second question is actually, it looks like it's somebody from Burma whose OPT in school expired already on May 16th. And they say, I have a 60-day grace period before my status ends. I am eligible to apply for TPS as a Burmese national. However, the registration has not begun. So they're a bit concerned about being in limbo. What do you want to tell them?
So in such a situation, this may be going too deep into the woods, but me and Shawn understand that, with F1 students, there's a 60-day grace period after you finish, when you graduate, you have 60 days to either, extend your education, go for a master's or a bachelor's if you've got an associate's, or go on OPT and then, have that occupational practical training. In the instant case, we have a student who's completed their OPT, and now they have 60 days to kind of decide, hey, should I, apply for, more education, or will this TPS, be available to me within that 60-day grace period? So again, I can't control how USCIS does things. The benefit, the silver lining, I guess, if she happens to go beyond that 60-day grace period and is here out of status, and TPS becomes available, she will have the benefit of TPS, but that period of out of status might affect future applications down the line. So she might be limited in what she's eligible to apply for.
All right.
Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we have some clarity on this. But if she wants to maintain status, then it would probably be best to, if she's seeking to continue her education, to transfer or continue her studies in a higher level degree.
All right. The same The same person asks also, is changing status to a B2 visitor visa a viable option to really maintain legal status if nothing else is available?
Well, because, you know, all the devil's in the details, I would highly recommend that she contact us to get that one-on-one consult so we could kind of discuss her immigration history. It's a viable option to change a status, but again, there's certain factors that need to be addressed in such a move, and because we're getting so specific, I think I rather them speak to an attorney one-on-one to kind of address these. But there's certain limitations in terms of, immigrant intent, stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So let's go next question. How about traveling on, when you get TPS or DED? Can you travel?
So yes, you could travel when you have TPS, but because it's a temporary protected status and the nature of it is to protect you from, possible harm in your home country, it's very specific. So you need special permission if you're going to leave and come back, and it's called advanced parole. So basically you're asking USCIS in advance to let you back in the United States after you're done with your trip abroad. So you must apply for advanced parole if you're planning on leaving, because if you leave without advanced parole, you could potentially, remove yourself from the United States, and they wouldn't be obligated to let you return.
All right. One last question, and maybe it's a little bit too broad, but what happens when TPS ends or the designation ends for all of those that have TPS? What then?
Well, TPS, based on the nature of TPS, it's temporary, it's protected status, it has an end date. So it behooves people who have TPS to kind of pursue, if they want to stay in the United States, more permanent options during this period of time. That being said, historically, me and Shawn know this well, that TPS has been extended, quite regularly every time it's designated. So we saw earlier that Syrian designation was extended for another 18 months. We have the comfortable belief that TPS will probably be extended as well. That being said, because it's a status, depending on your immigration history, you might have the benefit of transferring to another status, as we discussed with the previous message, that there might be some potentiality to change your status. Again, talk to an immigration professional. If they'll help you kind of outline your game plan for the next 18 months on what and when and how to apply for things.
All right. So Erick, I want to just take a minute to just remind, just to tell everybody.
Oh, that being said, let me go back a second, because
sure.
I know certain people were worried because there have been machinations by a previous administration to end TPS. Yeah. And
Good point.
just to give a little, those attempts were fought with injunctions in the court, extending that removal action. So most likely, if TPS ends and the administration wants to end it, I would imagine that there would be a few nonprofits, filing court motions to stop that. That being said, it's best to kind of be proactive, and if you have the opportunity to apply for something else while you have TPS, we recommend doing so, and you have help available, free or low cost if you're in New York. It might be worth the conversation. So,
all right. So we have one final question, Erick. Would traveling to another country as a visitor 5 years ago affect the eligibility for TPS now?
So, so for the individual who traveled as a visitor, let's say they were visiting family and there was nothing there that gave them permanence. It was, let's say they had a visitor visa like we're familiar with here, and it was strictly for vacation or for pleasure, and that third country didn't offer them any sort of citizenship or permanent residence or any sort of form of relief. that would not affect you from getting TPS. Presumably, again, I would discuss it with an attorney or legal professional just to make sure that the nature of it and that we could kind of back that up, with evidence, or lack of evidence.
All right. All right, that's all the questions we have. So Eric, I just want to take a minute to just mention that we are conducting an event over Zoom on Thursday, May 27th, to help assist with any immigration questions or cases you may want to talk to us about, but you need to make an appointment for this. So please, if you want to join us on that day, call us to see if you're eligible for TPS or DACA or a green card or any other immigration matter. Please call us. We have it up on the slide, Immigration Q&A, 646-664-9400, 212-652-2071. And Eric, while I gave, I'm sorry, you do need an appointment for that. So again, please call us. So Eric, while I was mentioning that, we had one other final question. We'll make this the last one. It is, I came here when I was 10 years old. I got TPS for Haiti in 2010. I would have been eligible for DACA if I hadn't had TPS. Am I still ineligible for DACA now? Do you want to take a stab at that, or you want to have this person call us?
Well, I'll have the person call us just because it's worth the conversation with an immigration professional.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely.
This is more of a DACA question, less so a TPS question. Yeah. So DACA was Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and the requirements for DACA is that, similar to TPS, that you've been in the United States on a certain date, have lived there at least 5 years, right? So that was 2007, 2012, you had to be there. And you had to have no status at the time the DACA started. So, so in the summer of 2012, if you had status, similarly, if you were an F1 at that time, I've had situations where you had siblings where one was an F1 and the other one fell out of status because they didn't want to continue their studies. The one who fell out of status got DACA. The other one had to pursue, change of status, continuing their education, going back and forth. So it's you could understand the frustration there, where, someone who's actively trying to maintain status didn't get the benefit of DACA. But unfortunately, if she had TPS at the time DACA came about, then her applying for DACA is probably not gonna yield an approval. That being said, I know that because we work with a lot of students, there's certain scholarships for DACA students. They have extended eligibility to people who had TPS in a similar predicament.
All right.
So, again, contact us. If you're a student and you're looking for scholarships, we could probably direct you there. But
Eric, let me just say this. For the person who asked that question, who came here when you were 10 years old and got TPS for Haiti in 2010, please call us to make an appointment. We definitely want to talk to you, particularly about your DACA question. All right. Eric, we have one more. All right. So sorry about this. They just keep popping up. Okay. If you have TPS and then you got your green card, 2-year temporary green card, do you have to reapply for TPS?
So what, maybe I'm missing something. So you got the 2-year green card.
Yeah.
Did something happen that you didn't get the 2-year?
No, it sounds like they got their green card, the 2-year temporary green card, and the TPS, they want to know whether they still need to reapply for TPS after TPS expires.
Well, if you have your green card,
oh, I'm sorry.
You
when your green card
have a more permanent solution, right?
Right.
What we kind of earlier alluded to, that if you want to stay in the United States, look for that more permanent solution.
Yeah.
That 2-year green card is the more permanent solution. And so long as, the removal of conditions, goes smoothly, that should yield a 10-year green card.
Yeah.
And they should, the TPS is no longer an issue.
So so that's a great interpretation of that question. So when it expires, I think they're talking about when the 2-year green card expires, and that advice is that Erick just gave, you want to convert that into a 10-year green card, and that will give you the more permanent solution. All right.
Yeah, and again, with maybe I'm misinterpreting the question, but definitely reach out to us. We'll assess. You'll get a one-on-one phone call or virtual session with one of our attorneys. You could explain all your documents, and then we could kind of lay out what your options are and what probably is the best plan going forward. Ultimately, you might have several options, and it's a question of deciding what path is right for you. So.
All right. Well, Erick, we've run over because I guess we were having so much fun with this. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. Erick, appreciate it, and thank you for sharing all of this with us. Again, just a reminder, we are conducting an immigration Q&A Zoom event on Thursday, May 27th. Really, for any immigration questions you may have, call us at one of our numbers. We're going to go ahead and show our contact info one more time while we sign off. We're going to get that slide up. And thank you all for joining us today. And we hope that you are healthy, safe, and happy. So long.